It's IB Nation Sports Talk. It is Wednesday, and that means Mailbag Day. And I tell you what, I've been teasing for the last 2 days. Special guest host coming up today, and here he is. You've got two Shauns today. Shaun Davis, our old friend from the Lucky Lefty Network, is with us. This is just the second time that Shaun and I have been together. Welcome. Glad to have you back.
Glad to be back with you, Shaun. Hey, anytime you can get two Shauns on the show, that's a special show.
That's right. Doesn't matter how you spell it. That's right. It's Shaun. That's all that matters. As Salty says, Shaun and Shaun. Going to be a good one. And some others welcoming Shaun Davis in today. And I tell you what, we got Notre Dame, we got Louisville coming up this Saturday. So we've got plenty of stuff, of course, that we can talk about there with questions. And Shaun Davis, of course. I'm not talking about myself in the third person. Shaun covers some recruiting. So unlike if it was just Vince and I, you can actually ask some recruiting questions tonight. Vince and I are recruiting neutral at best, I think. So Notre Dame women, speaking of recruiting, they got a big 5-star prospect committed today. Katerina Koval. She came over to the United States from Ukraine a couple of years ago. She's in New York. She was the New York Gatorade Player of the Year last year. Helped her team win a state championship. So they got a big recruiting get for the 2024 class, and it won't be too long. They'll be doing basketball. Does signing day in November. So I think we're roughly a month or so away from that. So big get for Niele Ivey. She just keeps raking in those 5 stars. Always good to see.
Do you think the women's squad is other than lacrosse, who just won a national championship, are they the next squad that's probably the closest to winning a national title, do you think, on the campus?
I would think so, because I've been saying since last year, with everything that they've got coming back and, just the whole thing, I think that there are, especially because of NIL, like Caitlin Clark is already talking, like she's got this year, plus she could stay next year if she wants to. Elizabeth Kitley out at Virginia Tech. I was drawing a blank there for a second. Their big post player out there. She could have left after this past season, but she decided to come back because she got some NIL stuff, and so she's staying around. Like, my point is, there are a lot of good teams. I think that Notre Dame definitely, at the very least, has realistic sights on getting to a Final Four this season, but there are probably a good 10 or 12 teams at least entering the season that are going to be in that conversation. Not just Notre Dame. There are a lot of good teams this year.
Yeah, because of the NIL and the transfer portal, like you said, Virginia Tech really, I think everybody thought Virginia Tech would be improved, but we didn't know they would be as good as they ended up being going into the season. So like you said, 10 teams, and then you'll have another 2 teams that you didn't expect that got a couple of transfers, and they end up being really good teams. So I love it, though. I love the parity. I love the parity we're seeing in college football this year.
For sure.
I think it's great all around for the colleges, the universities, and the fans.
Yep. We got a fun season opener coming up here in just a little bit more than a month when we go to Paris for Notre Dame and South Carolina. That's going to be a lot of fun as well. All right. Well, the questions are starting to roll in. So let's just jump into this mailbag and see what kind of stuff we can tackle. David Carpenter was one of the first ones in here. He had a slew of questions, David did. What are the first things you're going to be looking for in the game Saturday on offense and on defense?
Offensively, I just want to see Notre Dame get back into a rhythm. They were a very efficient offense early in the season. Not a lot of penalties, not a lot of mistakes, and they were able to really drive the ball every time they got the ball. And if they made a mistake, it was because they missed the pass or someone dropped the pass or simple things like that. But they were always ahead of the sticks. They didn't have 2nd and 15, 1st and 15. So I want to see them get back to playing efficient offensive football. Defensively, you know what? I really have come to a place, Shaun, where I am very complimentary. And I haven't always been this way, but I am at a place where I've been very complimentary of Al Golden as of late. I really have.
Yeah.
I think he's done a great job. And I don't understand it when he said it before the season, but he said coming in as late as he did last year, he really didn't get an opportunity to custom his approach to each team because he didn't have knowledge of each team. And he said this offseason, he felt like he could really go and game plan each game differently because he's had a chance to watch each team over in the offseason.
Right.
And I think the approach and just the way he had Riley Leonard confused in the first half yesterday with the different coverages and everything, I think that goes to show that that is one of his strengths. And this defense is playing so much better than I really expected them to play. I knew the back end would be pretty good.
Mm-hmm.
You know, people complain about some things with the linebackers and the D line, but you can't argue with results. They really played their hearts out.
I was going to say, I think the front seven played one of the best games they've played all year against Duke last week with just the way they defended, as you said, Riley Leonard, and really kind of keeping him confused as much as possible, not just as a passer, but as a runner as well, with some of the loops and stunts and slides and things like that they were doing, to be able to shut him down. Do they need to tackle a little bit better here and there? Yeah. But at the same time, in the right place. And I think what I'm looking for this Saturday against Louisville defensively is just because they've got this big downfield, stretch the field offense with all the 30-plus yard plays. They're second in the nation in 30-plus yard passing plays, lead the nation in 40-plus yard passing plays. I'm pretty confident that Benjamin Morris and Cam Hart and the rest of that secondary are going to, more than hang with these guys, that they'll do good. But I think that's going to be kind of the first thing to look at, because if they hit a couple early on, then it helps their run game, kind of open up their run game as well, as explosive as they can be.
And if I'm not mistaken, I believe they have the leading rusher in the ACC as well.
I believe so.
Yeah. So, the balance, they run the ball 54% of the time. And then they go heavy play action to take advantage of downfield opportunities, like you said. And they have 2 or 3 tall wide receivers that are 6'2", 6'3", can stretch the field. And Jack Plummer, who this is our third time facing him, third consecutive year, right? He faced him at Purdue and then at Cal, and now he's at Louisville. So the one thing we can do is put pressure on him, because he's not really good at scrambling. So if you can pressure him and get him off his mark, it will bode well.
Sacked him 6 times last year. So
yes,
exactly right. All right, man. A lot of other. Coleman Smith has the recruiting question for you. Scale of 1 to 10, the chances Notre Dame can land Chris Burgess and Talon Taylor, a couple of Chicagoland guys.
Yeah, Talon Taylor. I'll start with him. Young man, wide receiver out of the suburbs of Chicago. His mother, all mothers fall in love with Notre Dame. I would give him somewhere right now, my confidence level would be at about 8 to 9.
Okay.
You have Miami that's hot on his trail. Wisconsin is hot on his trail. Of course, Notre Dame. And then I fully expect that late, because this is what they do, SEC schools will jump in a little bit later and start to offer him, because he's been having a fantastic prep season. So, but right now, I would set it at about 8, 9 for Notre Dame to land the services of Talon Taylor. Chris Burgess out of Simeon here in Chicago has a great relationship with the staff, has a great relationship with Al Washington, talks very highly of Al Washington and Al Golden and Marcus Freeman. And Colorado really just jumped on him. And that's what I'm interested in seeing, how this Colorado thing goes, because I believe he was at the game last weekend, at the USC game. And I think he's going to be at the Notre Dame USC game. He'll be coming to South Bend. And I think that, if I'm not mistaken, that will be his 4th or 5th trip to South Bend. So that just goes to show his level of interest, So
yeah,
I would say my confidence level is about a 7 for Chris Burgess right now.
So both of them fairly high then. 7 for Burgess, 8, 9 for for Taylor. That's pretty good odds for
Yeah.
both of them. So that would be
Yep.
very good. All right. All right. Good stuff. Tim with an interesting question here. Of course, the penalty bug has bitten this team. They're averaging 8.5 penalties a game over their last 4 games. And everyone, the 12 penalties last week obviously stand out. He says, do you guys believe in gassers/suicides to cure the penalty bug? It would be 12 of them 70 yards long this week. That's what they did to us, says Tim. What do you think about that?
I never enjoyed suicides as an athlete, so I'm not sure that I could support those as a way to cure the penalties. But look, I think the penalties, to be honest, is part of the mental side effects of the Ohio State game. To be honest, and I said it like this,
They only
Shaun.
had 4 against Ohio State.
Right, I said it like this. I felt like Notre Dame went through a bad breakup in that Ohio State game. And when you have a bad breakup, your friends try to get you back out there to get you to yourself. And the first time you go out, you feel really uncomfortable, right? And the second and third time you go out, you start to feel more like yourself. And I think this Louisville game is when Notre Dame will start to feel a little bit more like themselves. And then when they face USC, they'll be even closer to what they were before the Ohio State game. So it's just about them getting back to being who they are. And that's the mental approach. And that's something that the coaching staff and Coach Freeman, that's the challenge that's laid before them. To, get their mental back and get them focused on the task at hand and to get them to grab a hold to the fact that they're a really good team. Like, no doubts, we understand what happened against Ohio State. In spite of that, you're still one of the top 5 to 8 teams in the nation. And we have business to take care of so we can get to the college football playoff. For me, that's what it comes down to. Because if they're focused, then I think the penalties would take care of themselves.
And look, the false starts obviously stand out. And you could see that they made a switch as the game went on. They weren't using the clap count in the second half. They got away from the clap, and you saw Sam Hartman doing the leg kick for the snap. And Jesse cued me into this when he was watching the game. And then when I went back and watched it, I could see some of it. Like the first false start on Zeke Correll, the middle linebacker goes up to one of the defensive tackles and smacks him twice on the leg, simulating the snap count. And you could see and as I watched the game, you could see some of that stuff going on. Duke was simulating the claps that Sam Hartman was doing, whether it was, that specific instance, Pat, slapping a defensive tackle on the butt or, actual just clapping and stuff like that. So they were simulating snap counts, which is not supposed to happen. That is supposed to be a penalty. But I don't think anyone's shocked that wasn't called a penalty in that game.
There's a laundry list of things that went against Notre Dame from reffing standpoint.
I will give it to the Duke crowd because, like, we were knocking NC State a few weeks ago. Oh, is it truly a home field advantage? And I don't feel like it was that much of a home field advantage. Duke Stadium has a much smaller capacity than NC State, and it was a lively environment. And they needed either the clap or the silent, and some of that had to do with it as well. When you've got that much crowd noise, and you've got you had a couple receivers who jumped off sides with what's the count, what are we hearing, what are we those kind of things. Some of that stuff's going to happen, but you do need better mental focus. That's
the stuff like Cam Hart lining up all sides as the cornerback. It's like,
now those things have nothing to do with crowd noise.
That's focus. John Baptiste jumping into the zone and literally staying there and not trying to get back. Those are just mental focus issues. And like I said, I think those things will dissolve. We'll start to see the dissolution of some of those things against Louisville on Saturday night. I really do.
Yeah. And I don't know that I just don't think that you see colleges using, that kind of drastic punishment anymore to alleviate some of that stuff. Like our high school coaches were good at doing that,
Oh, they definitely were. Absolutely. Oh, man.
I know. Scott says, we'll have our 7th game in 7 weeks, soon to be followed by our 8th game after midterms. That's, of course, USC next week. What can and should Notre Dame football be doing to provide an ideal balance between rest and being ready to win both games? I would just say Marcus Freeman addressed that this week. They have the GPSs on these players, and they know, like, between practice and games, they know who's got, either they know the snap counts these guys have. They know the exertion these guys have, whether it's, like, because of the GPS, they can tell, just like your Fitbit or your Apple Watch or whatever, like, they know if it's a exerted run, is it just a jog, is it what, all those kind of things. So he gets that data, he said, every Sunday, and then Monday they have a meeting about it. They go over all this stuff, and so I think that's definitely being addressed, and they know, kind of during the week, based on this data they're getting, who needs to be dialed down, who's okay, and that kind of thing. So there's a lot of science behind it, and I'm more than confident. They still have the massages and the chamber, the like the massage chambers and all those different things as well. There's all kinds of bells and whistles over there. I think they'll be just fine. They literally, hire masseuses to take care of their muscles, and they have chiropractors to take care of their spines and all that stuff as well. So I think they'll be fine with all the modern data that they've got rolling through there.
Yeah, I spoke with Cam McDaniel, and that's right up his alley. The company he works with is recovery, restoration of the body.
Okay.
The electrons and all of that stuff. I think he believes in what Notre Dame is trying to do, and he said he loves the direction that Marcus Freeman is trying to go, which, I wish Marcus Freeman said he started that before Matt Balis actually left. They had a discussion about the changes he wanted to make. So you started talking about that, but there's something else that Cam pointed out. He said not only getting these guys to recover for the game, but he said you really need to watch how they practice, because every day these young men are dealing with course loads at the University of Notre Dame. They're dealing with regular life, and they're dealing with football. And he said some injuries happen because people come to practice and they're not all there mentally. And he said that's when you get a lot of injuries, soft tissue injuries. So the mental aspect of the staff being in tune with the players and making sure that everybody has a good mental space.
It's a good point.
Even during the week practicing goes a long way to what they talked about, making sure that everyone's healthy and they can get up to the bye week. I don't know why they didn't put a bye week early on this schedule.
Man,
it is.
I
mean, it
is a rough stretch. Especially they didn't know that this stretch of games here was going to end up all being against ranked and unbeaten teams, and they were all going to be prime time as well. But you knew you had Ohio State and USC a couple of weeks apart, and it's a tough stretch. It is, especially as you get to the end of it. That's when you're really challenged, I think, to kind of do what you're talking about. Keep that mental focus and make sure that your mind is in the right place, because you do have midterms coming up next week as well. And that's always a thing, like when you talk about mental, that's a big thing, mental fatigue.
And Notre Dame has traditionally struggled. Is it the week of midterms or the week after? I remember during the Lou Holtz era, it was after.
Yeah. Yep.
I remember that.
Mr. 2.0 asks what we're thinking we see from the offense this week. Does Parker lean into the tight ends more? Do you expect more new wrinkles / creativity? Which players get consistent touches and targets this week?
It's interesting because I had disappointment in the game plan, watching the game live, and then I got an opportunity to talk to Brian Driscoll and then see some things, some all 22 still shots. And I was like, you know what? The game plan wasn't that bad, and the offensive line could have played better. We know they were short on receivers, but I think I would like to see what I saw early on. Traditionally, for the last 10 years, I think everybody can say we have pretty consistently had to watch Notre Dame's offense struggle to get the play call in and constantly be up against the play clock. even out of timeouts. It's been the weirdest thing in the world. Like, why are we always struggling up against the play clock and to get a playoff? And early in the season, the tempo and the energy that Notre Dame was playing with, it seemed like the calls were getting in quick. They were getting to the line of scrimmage quick. Sam Hartman had a chance to make checks, change protection, and change calls. And then they went off and were successful. And against Ohio State and Duke, it looked like the pace and the tempo slowed down a little bit. And they were a little more stagnant. I don't know if it was the elevation of the importance of the games that caused that, but I want to see them get back to that. More pace, more tempo, more efficient, getting to the line of scrimmage a little bit quicker, and then giving Sam a chance to look at the defense and then go ahead and play efficient football. That's the one thing I really want to see the offense do differently. Jared Parker, I think he's done a good job. I really do, because I really think, honestly, that Notre Dame in the first half realistically probably left 13 points on the field just from drop passes and penalties.
Yeah.
I mean, they were successful. They just kept stubbing their toes. And
I mean, it sounds a little cliche, but literally, and like we kind of knocked on both Golden and Parker last week for falling back on, well, we just have to execute it better. I mean, you're right. There were too many drop passes that keep the chains moving, and
they're in the red zone.
Too many penalties.
Rico drops a first down pass on the 2-yard line.
Yeah.
Right. Then they get backed up and they eventually miss the field goal. It's like you can't miss opportunities like that. If Rico catches the ball on the 2-yard line, I venture to say the chances are that they're going to run the ball in from there are pretty good.
Something else Jared Parker talked about yesterday when he was kind of talking about last week's game plan is just he knows that he needs to probably adjust a little bit better. That's, he came out and said that he needs to make those adjustments better. And that was kind of my take on Monday after watching that and, really watching some of the last two games against Duke and Ohio State. One, two good defenses they're playing, but two, when you are playing good defenses and something's not working, like Saturday against Duke seemed like the extreme. Like you can't just keep trying to pound Undrick Estime, as good as he is, into the middle of that line and hope for a different result. They do tend to run a lot. Like when I go back and look at the play-by-play, they do tend to run a lot on first down. And so that's a simple adjustment there, mixing things up, what you're doing, the kinds of runs you're running on first down. Use a little bit more play action on first down and, take your shots downfield and things like this, because this defense this week and really the next 2 weeks is going to present Notre Dame more chances to score and make more plays, I think, downfield than the last couple of weeks. They played two really good defenses back to back, and the next two that they're going to play, Louisville is not horrible. They're not as bad as USC, but at the same time, they're not as good, nearly as good as either one of these other two defenses. They're going to give them more opportunities, I think, to do some stuff downfield specifically, especially when you get the receivers back. That is a factor as well. When you're down to three receivers, you can play. That was a big factor.
Yeah, I felt like against Ohio State, they weren't aggressive enough. But then even with three wide receivers, they came out very aggressive, trying to throw the ball over the top to Tobias right off the bat. And like I said, I think, like you said, the adjustments, getting the running backs involved in the passing game. Jeremiah Love, can we see him maybe 4 to 5 more times?
And like the screen game has just all but disappeared. Like you see one here and there.
Right.
And when a defense is getting after you, just hit them with that screen, because these running backs have shown that they can take one to the house if you're going to do, just because you almost got one horribly blown up against Ohio State, you can't screen.
Yeah.
Kind of on that same subject, what percentage chance we see Braylon James and Nolan Ziegler the next 2 weeks? I just think it's 0 with Braylon James. If we were going to see Braylon James before the bye week, it was going to be last week, as depleted as they were. If he was ready, he would have been on the field even for 5 to 8 snaps to give some of those other guys more of a break. Ziegler, on the other hand, is someone that Marcus Freeman said Monday is very close to getting back. It sounds like, it's kind of like conditioning and kind of getting himself into football shape and that kind of thing. He could very well be back in the next couple of weeks. And if he's back and he performs anything like what we saw from him during spring practice, that's going to be a big boost to like the nickel dime packages and stuff like that Notre Dame has defensively with his athleticism.
Absolutely. The depth, the continued depth that they have at linebacker. And I'm sure everybody's like frustrated. I know I'm frustrated because the linebackers have no problem getting into the backfield.
Right.
I think I told Brian, like, if I see another linebacker in the backfield with a shot on a running back that just whiffs, I was like, I might throw something through the TV. It's like, because come on, tackling. But I agree with you on Braylon James. And I want to say this. Marcus Freeman has said it. Tommy Reese has said it. And recently, I think Deion Sanders mentioned it during a press conference. As fans, as much as we want to see, because it's exciting to always see the young freshmen and the young players get their opportunity. But when these coaches come to the press conference and say, this young man isn't ready, you have to believe them.
Right.
If they tell you he's not ready.
They're playing two other freshmen out there. So it's not like it's not like the previous regime where they have this belief that freshmen can't help you. They're playing two other freshmen. So if they thought Braylon James was ready to go and could help, he'd be out there. I have no doubt about that.
Like Deion Sanders has the #1 defensive back recruit, Cormani McClain, that didn't play the first 4 games, and the media is like, yo, why is he playing? And he said he's not ready.
Right.
He's not mature enough yet. He's not taking care of his business the way he should.
He's got Edwards out there on the offensive side of the ball.
So. Absolutely. So we have to trust these coaches that when they tell us that these young men aren't ready, and they're just not ready to come out on that big stage.
Speaking of the wide receivers, there's a couple. There's a handful of Chancey Stuckey wide receiver questions that we can kind of work in here at the same time. So USMA 87. What does Stuckey need to do to get Meriwether on track? Bubs, what is your opinion on the coaching job of Chancey Stuckey? He's working with some guys that were highly sought after coming out of high school, and no one seems to be improving. So what do you think about those, Shaun Davis?
I'll start with the second one.
Okay.
And push back just a little bit. Rico, for 2 straight weeks, has been a very clutch receiver in the 4th quarter.
Yep.
Had a touchdown late against Ohio State. Had a pass interference call late on that last drive, and he caught a ball on that last drive. So you have a freshman making an impact. Jaden Greathouse has made an impact. So to say no one is improving under him, I will push back. And all of these kids move at a different pace. They just do. You just can't expect everybody to move at the same pace. For me, Tobias Merriweather is a byproduct of missed opportunity last year. I think they had opportunities to instill confidence in him last year, and they didn't take advantage of that. So he came into this year trying to really get his confidence up at the same time, trying to develop as a wide receiver. And on top of that, and then I'll let you take it away. I know Malik and I got word during the spring that his mentality really wasn't there yet. The skills are there, the physical attributes are there, but mentally, it was almost like, okay, the coaching staff, we're waiting for him to kind of like realize how good he can be.
Right.
So now it's all about confidence. Malik mentioned this. He said, go watch the drag route that he dropped. He didn't expect to get the ball. That's why his hands went up in a lazy fashion.
Right.
He's coming on the drag, and he's not expecting a ball. He sees it late. That's why he dropped it. And he said, I don't know if it's a disconnect between him and Sam but mentally, you have to run every route with purpose, even if you're the 3rd or 4th option.
Right. If nothing else, you have to sell your route.
Absolutely. And he said, when you see someone like that, not expecting to get the ball. He said that's mental, that's confidence. And he said that's all with him. Once he gets his confidence, because he's always open. What he beat Al Blades, their number one defensive back, deep 3 times.
Right.
Had him by 4 or 5 yards 2 or 3 times. And it's like getting open isn't the problem. The concentration, the drops, and just the mental focus and the confidence. And I told Notre Dame fans, it's real easy to be down on him and to say disparaging things about him. What's even more effective is to send them some love. Heck, send them a direct message on social media. Tell them we got your back. Tell them you're still our guy, because that's what the coaching staff is telling them,
Right.
So instead of going the negative route, just understand that he's developing as a young man, and everybody can't be Rico Flores and Jaden Greathouse and walk in with confidence as freshmen. They walked onto campus with confidence. So,
and the biggest thing with Tobias, I think, is just what you're talking about. It's all between the ears. It's just about, not just gaining some confidence, but making sure that when you're like Marcus Freeman talked about Howard Cross the other day, about how he is one of the most intentional players they have on every rep in practice. If you want it to translate from the practice field to Saturday, or, if you want it to translate to Saturday, it's got to start on the practice field. And that's, we in the opportunities we had over there during training camp, it was more inconsistent, I think, than we thought it was going to be. There's talent there. We all know there's talent there, but it's just about right here. And in terms of Chancey Stuckey, we're like, we can see when a player or when a coach is like barking at guys and using the negative stuff. I don't feel like watching this coaching staff, like there's a lot of the negative stuff going on. It's a very typically positive environment. Now, obviously, we don't get to see meeting rooms when they're breaking down film and all that different kind of stuff, and we're not at practice anymore. But I personally don't have any doubts about the way Chancey Stuckey is coaching. I think that it is still about just reps with these guys and time with him and just development still. And he's only been here for a little bit more than a year at this point.
Shaun, don't you think coaching, sorry about that, don't you think coaching is very similar to parenting?
Oh,
and
for
every child is not the same.
Right.
So everybody in that wide receiver room is not the same.
Right.
And you're dealing with really confident kids that came in as freshmen. You're dealing with a kid that came in. He might have been confident, but to be honest, he really didn't. None of the wide receivers really had a quarterback last year to be able to take advantage of their skill sets. So
no, I mean, that's a great point too. That's
absolutely,
like, to an extent, especially the guys who were here last year, because as we've talked about, guys like Flores and Greathouse, who came from good high school programs and came in very highly developed to go along with the skills and, just the talent that they've got, they were ahead just because of that. But it's
a challenge.
Yeah.
It's a challenge. And, you try to teach and give each guy what they need. And ultimately, like I said, like parents, eventually we have to trust what we poured in and then allow it to go be tested. And, at some point, Tobias is going to have to take accountability,
right,
for his football career and say to himself, it's time for me to change my life.
Right.
Yeah.
D Troll Hunter, thanks for the super chat. He's probably out of here by now, but he said that he had to jump out, so we do appreciate the super chat from Mr. Troll Hunter. I'm looking here for. I just saw one. Oh, this is the one I was going to throw up there. Scott, does Sam Hartman struggle with play action passes? Why isn't Notre Dame using play action more effectively? It's a very legitimate question considering how well they run the ball.
Yeah.
With the exception of last week, really.
I don't know if it's so much that he struggles with play action passes. but he is adapting to a pro style offense. And with his experience, a lot of people might have expected the transition to be seamless. But, I think we've seen a couple of things happen within the last 2 weeks. And this is funny, right? Because you watch their offense struggle to put points on the board, and you say to yourself, okay, is it the quarterback play? Is it the O line? Is it Jared Parker? And really, honestly, it's a gumbo and a mixed bag of everything happening simultaneously.
Mm-hmm.
It really is, right? The emotions of the loss to Ohio State mixed with losing your wide receiving core to injury, and mix that with the offensive line not having one of its best games, and then Sam Hartman missing a couple of reads or a couple of passes, and then add in Mike Elko, who's a great coach and a really good defense that he has, and you get what we saw on Saturday night in connection with Ohio State. And that's just football, right? We just watched Washington won by a touchdown over Arizona, and they were favored by 17 points, right? Colorado made a game of it against USC late after they were getting blown out. Georgia was a double-digit favorite against Auburn, and they were tied with like 7 minutes left in the game. So this is college football, and this is just football. I think Howard Cross said that in the post game. He was asked about, are you guys surprised that the game was as close as it was? And he said, man, this is the game. This is football. This is what happens sometimes, So I don't think Sam really struggles with play action passes, but I do think
that they need to use it more.
I think they need to use it more, and I would like to see him under center running play action a little bit more than to run it from the shotgun, because I don't know how your fake can really be, how good your fake can be if you're not a running threat.
Yeah.
From the shotgun.
Yeah.
If he was a running threat, then it would definitely be more effective.
Well, and again, they've run so much on first down, and I haven't looked over all the, to look at, every first down, what they're doing, but especially drive starters, we've seen them run quite a bit. And in general, it seems like they run a lot on first down. And when you do run that much on first down, it's like I've been saying for a few weeks, I would just love to see them go play action on the very first play of the game and take a shot someplace downfield. But what they typically do is come right out running the football. But that's, again, it's like they've got to figure out what their tendencies are and break it. And as a new offensive coordinator, that's something that Jared Parker has to kind of be able to look at with some self-critique and figure some of that stuff out, figure out where his tendencies are, and maybe the head coach can help nudge him along there as well, because they have piles of analytics. They've talked about it. They've got piles of analytics, but it doesn't do any good if you're not using it the right way.
And they did that against Ohio State. Remember, they really didn't. They didn't really unveil the two-back set until Ohio State.
Yeah.
And the reason they did that is because they knew Ohio State's linebackers, and I'm sure Jesse can tell you about this. Their linebackers are so aggressive coming downhill in the run game. When you throw that lead blocker in as the running back, and then you can crease them, it was difficult for them to operate and make plays in the backfield like they're used to making. Exactly. And that was something that I loved in the Ohio State game. Like, okay, that's a nice little wrinkle that you didn't show early that took them and kept them off balance. And now you continue to add to that, like you said, evolve each week, play action, and throw the ball on first down, and take advantage of defenses. Because now, after the last 2 weeks, I venture to say that Jeff Brom and his staff are saying, "Hey, this number 88, we need to pay attention to him."
Right.
Like he's pretty good.
But that's also going to leave some opportunities for number 13, and it's going to leave some opportunities, and that's why you can't get too hung up, I think, as we've talked about with this offense from one game to the next, like who's getting the catches here, who's getting it can change in a hurry from week to week based on who you're playing and just how that coverage rolls. That's generally what they've done such a good job of is Sam Hartman not just locking in on one guy like we saw so
Yeah.
much of last year with 87. The ball is going all over the place, and even though the offense has maybe stagnated a little bit
Hmm.
the last couple of weeks, I think that in the long run, it's going to be fine. I think
Yeah.
we're going to see. I think we're going to see a difference this week.
Yep. I totally agree.
David said he loved the hype video with the coach's overlay. Could one of you help me understand what it means to tell Audric to cheat the left side? I think that's what they told him. They told him to cheat to edge out. And you heard, I think it was Dylan McCullough before they left the sideline. He said, get over there to the tackle if you need to. He was basically just telling him to widen out because they knew they were going to need him as a blocker out there in space to keep Sam Hartman protected for that throw that he was going to make. And that's exactly what happened. So they're basically just telling him to slide his split out a little bit farther in the backfield toward the tackle so he'd be there and be ready to block
because what they expected. Look, Mike Elko, I think, made two fatal mistakes. The last series, he was getting to Notre Dame, especially after the offensive pass interference, via the pressure. They were having great success with pressure. And then you only bring 3 on the 4th down and drop 8. And Sam Hartman does what he does. And then I think the other mistake he made was, there's no way I'm giving Notre Dame the ball back. I got 4th and 4, and if I can convert this in Notre Dame's territory, I can run the clock out. I'm going for it. I would much rather go for it than pooch punt, because I don't want to give Sam Hartman the ball. I just don't. But I guess that showed he had more faith in his defense that had played well all night than his offense in that moment.
Especially, because they figured they were going to catch Notre Dame off guard, and they obviously did exactly what they wanted to with that pooch. They pinned them deep inside their own 10-yard line, and it got even deeper with the false start. You're right. I mean, the way his defense had been playing, he had confidence in it. But as you said, just like Al Golden a week before, the defense that he called on that pivotal play was just all the difference in the world.
It's almost like you talk yourself out of it.
Yeah.
You say to yourself, okay, we blitzed 3 plays in a row. They're probably expecting it, and they probably have something that they can go against the blitz right now. So let's just fall back. And that's what a mistake was.
Yep. Irish Gordian Knot. Who's your favorite former Notre Dame player to watch in the NFL right now? Vegas has been a huge disappointment with how they're not utilizing Mayer. Do you have a favorite Notre Dame player to watch?
As of right now, with his success, Kyron Williams has been fantastic for the Rams.
He has.
Yeah, he's been fantastic for the Rams. And then I'm happy to see Harrison Smith having another all-pro season early, the way he is. Even though the Vikings, I think they're 1-3 and they're struggling, Harrison Smith has had a fantastic start to his season.
Cole Kmet had a nice week last week, but that's like you get like two or 3 of those a season, and that's unfortunately been it with that Bears offense. I mean, mine is an easy one because I've got the best right guard in the NFL in Zach Martin on my team, the Cowboys. So that is my favorite guy to watch. The only thing that frustrates me is like when they get in short yardage situation and they go left instead of right. You can ask Jesse. I'm texting him all the time. If you're going short yardage, you get behind number 7. There are no other options.
Right.
That's right.
Because the left tackle is still hurt, right?
Yeah.
Tyrod.
Yep.
How do you see? You think they get a win this weekend?
I'm not very confident.
Okay.
After watching the way the Cardinals were able to roll over them a couple of weeks ago, I'm just not very confident in this 49ers game. And the fact that we're staying up late Saturday night for Notre Dame and Louisville, and then I've got to stay up late Sunday night to watch that. I'm not very, I will be, I am curious to see if they can slow down that 49ers offense, but what's still been the problem, and it was the problem against Arizona. Arizona just came out and smash-mouthed it. Came at them, and that's what San Francisco is going to do with CMC. So I'm not the most confident person in the world in that game, unfortunately. Let me see. Some super chats from Tyler Evans. Thank you very much. Which team is the biggest disappointment this season? I've been thinking about this, and I don't know.
Oh, I'll go ahead and be petty.
Okay. Yeah.
LSU.
That's actually as soon as I said I don't know, that one came to mind, and then
I'll be petty
yeah,
for everyone.
it's a good one.
LSU has been a huge
Yep.
disappointment. They almost lost to Arkansas at home. They go on the road and lose to Ole Miss. They still have Texas A&M on the schedule. That could be another loss. They still have Alabama on the schedule. That could be another loss. And let's see. Alabama plays A&M this weekend. LSU plays Missouri, which is going to be another tough game this week. So,
boy,
it might be a tough season.
BK loses to Missouri.
Hey,
all bets are off now, huh?
Yeah, absolutely. Because I didn't realize how good the wide receiver core and the quarterback from Missouri have been this year.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the weakness of that LSU defense. Their defensive backfield can't stop anybody.
Yep. Carmel Humphrey said Florida, LSU, Texas A&M. I mean, A&M's only lost once so far. Interesting Miami, one for them with Alabama this weekend, though. But Florida for sure. Like Florida going to Utah and losing to Utah 2 years in a row.
And then they have an impressive win against Tennessee at home.
Right.
And then they go on the road against Kentucky and just put up a stinker.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. Another super chat from Tyler. He says he can't watch the kicking game. It's special teams have been a little shakier this year than what we got to see last year.
Yeah. Yeah. I was concerned about them wanting Estimate to go down at the 1. I had no interest in seeing Garrett Schrader take the field.
No.
With that pressure.
And I mean, like watching that hype video,
right?
That's like the only negative I would take out of that is when you heard what Marcus Freeman was talking about. Hey, maybe he should have gone down at the 1, and then we use more clock and we leave him no time when we kick the field goal. But I mean, obviously, he was trying to set that up to where Estime, even if he only gained 2 or 3 yards or whatever, they were going to let that clock wind as much as possible and try to kick the field goal from there. And from the 30-yard line, that's a 47-yard field goal. That's not a gimme by any means. I wanted no part of that. None at all. None. Here's another recruiting question for you from USMA 87. Can Notre Dame overcome their early missteps with Justin Scott and flip him?
It's going to take a lot of prayer from the fan base. I mean, they're doing their job, and they thought they might be able to get him on campus for the Ohio State game. And, beating Ohio State would have gone a long way to putting something in the back of his mind. But, they're working at it. Hey, the staff is working at it. So we'll see. But
I mean, that's all they can do.
That's all they can do.
I think that, I do tend to agree with some of the other commenters there. It's like they're working on it. If they get him, great. But obsessing over it at this point, months after he's committed and everything, it's like move on, focus on the guys that you got. It's unfortunate that they weren't able to get him, but I do kind of agree. That ship, I think, for the most part, has sailed. Keep working on him if you can, because, I mean, look at Audric Estime. He was a last-minute flip.
Flip.
Those things happen, and he's not the only one. You can flip guys late, but I wouldn't get too hung up on it.
No.
Shaun, I've got some questions that are suitable for rapid fire.
Okay.
Are you ready for rapid fire?
Absolutely.
All right. Well, let's jump into the first one here, if I can find my sheet. So after seeing Notre Dame score a total of 35 points in the last 2 weeks combined against Ohio State and Duke, a lot of people concerned about the offense, and we've talked about the offense a little bit in the first part of the mailbag. Scale of 1 to 10, what is your concern with Notre Dame's offense going forward?
6. And I'm not concerned with the offense moving forward against Louisville, against Clemson, or the rest of the ACC schedule. But I'm looking for Marcus Freeman to take this program to the next level. And what we've seen in the playoffs, you have to be able to score points against good teams to win games in the college football playoff. So the litmus test for me was Ohio State. They had opportunities. They had 2 fourth downs. They didn't convert. They left plenty of points on the field. They had an opportunity, in my opinion, to score anywhere from 24 to 30 points against Ohio State. They just weren't aggressive enough, in my opinion. Now you go to Duke, and as I said before, they left points on the field just from drop passes and penalties and it being inefficient. So my concern is really not about whether or not they can be the prolific offense that we saw at the start of the season. I believe that offense, especially against ACC teams, is going to show up. For me, the challenge is Jared Parker in big games, like against Ohio State, not being passive and being aggressive.
Mm-hmm.
You have to come out, you have to be aggressive, and you have to take opportunities to go against the grain and not do things that people expect you to do. You talked about it. First down. Hey, throw the ball. Throw the ball. Go against your trend.
Right.
And then you put the other team on their heels. Those are the type of things that I'm looking for. So the USC game is very, because as good as our defense is, Caleb Williams is going to put some points on the board. As good as Notre Dame's defense is, USC is going to score more than 20, 24, 20. They have a chance to get to 30. Their offense is that good.
Right.
But Notre Dame has a chance to score 40 against that USC defense. So
I agree.
That for me will be the next litmus test to see whether or not this offense can take the next step and can be trusted to score points in big games.
Yeah, my concern level is pretty low. It's actually like down around it too, because I think I touched on this a little bit earlier. Ohio State's got the number 2 scoring defense in the country. Duke's got the number 7 scoring defense in the country. These were not slouch defenses they were going against. And like, even though, has Notre Dame been effective running the ball most of the season? Yeah. Mike Elko's a really good defensive mind, though. Duke did Notre Dame, I just saw a graphic, I think, going into last weekend about Notre Dame uses pulling guards. They're like one of the top 5 teams in the country in terms of how Parker has pulled the guards this year. Mike Elko did a great job of taking that away. They would not let Notre Dame get to that. Again, I think the biggest thing comes down to, can Jared Parker be the guy who can make those adjustments as the game went on? The unbalanced line against NC State goes to the top of the line in terms of things weren't working the way they wanted. Hey, let's do this. Yeah. They came out, boom, they hit him with it. They used it a couple more times. Didn't have an 80-yard run, after that, but they were still successful with it. Can he adjust as the game goes on and not just go off this script? Because I think that young coaches in general, like, they definitely have this plan in their brain. We saw it with Tommy Rees. Yeah. He obviously had a plan of what he wanted. His big adjustment was the scan stuff, standing at the line of scrimmage, wanting to move guys around based on what the defense was giving him and stuff like that. You got to be able to adjust as the game goes along, and I think that's going to be the biggest thing. But as you just said, none of the defenses they're going to see as somebody said, Clemson is not going to be a pushover. I'm not looking past Clemson at all. But none of the defenses that they're going to play the rest of the season are going to be nearly as good as the 2 they just got done playing. So I'm not concerned.
Not at all. Not at all.
North Carolina State is changing quarterbacks. They're going from Brennan Armstrong to MJ Morris. Does that change the way at all that you think about Notre Dame's win over North Carolina State when you see a quarterback getting benched a couple weeks later?
No, because going into the Notre Dame game, we knew how bad Brennan Armstrong was. He puts the ball in harm's way consistently. He's done it in that game. Yeah. He did it in that game. You knew that was going to happen. And Notre Dame they had 1 sack toward the end of the game. I think Donovan Heinisch ended up getting that 1 sack, but they pressured him and they got him off his mark. And when you do that, he's going to turn the ball over. My concern in that game was how the offense would fare against a very good front seven for North Carolina State.
Yeah.
And like you said, that was one of the examples where the staff, when they had the weather break, went into the locker room and made the necessary adjustments. And then the offense came out and they were very efficient and they put points on the board. So for me, I think it's more of, I think North Carolina State feels like, well, they were up double digits against Louisville. And Brennan Armstrong just kept making mistakes, you know? So they really feel like they've probably lost 2 or 3 games because of his mistakes. But it doesn't change the way I feel about that win. I think with either quarterback, Notre Dame would have found a way to put points up and to keep the points for North Carolina State down.
Yeah, and I mean, he wasn't playing horribly at that point. Granted, it was still relatively early in the season for them because they had one less game than Notre Dame, but he had played solid the first couple of games. And I think that, with the whole Robert and I reunion and all that stuff, obviously they were expecting to get a lot more out of Brennan Armstrong. But the key is what you talked about. That's still, I mean, look at what NC State's defense did to Louisville. Like we were talking about the explosives that Louisville has, and look what NC State's defense did to them. Like Notre Dame did a much better job against North Carolina State's defense than Louisville did last week. And I think that was the biggest part of that whole thing is the what Notre Dame was ultimately, again, as you just mentioned, that's like the good from Jared Parker in terms of his ability to make adjustments. We need to see more of that Jared Parker going forward. But because of what Notre Dame was ultimately able to do, especially in the second half against that defense, you can't take that away from Notre Dame. So no, it doesn't change the way I feel about it either.
Yeah, and you have to feel really good about that win still, in my opinion, because of the weather.
Yeah.
The break.
You're on the road.
You're on the road.
The whole thing.
Yeah, if I'm not mistaken, your freshman, that was their first road test.
Right.
In that environment. So there are a lot of things that I think shows that might still be the most impressive win on the schedule, in my opinion. Like I understand the Duke game was what it was because of the emotions of the Ohio State game, but just both sides of the ball playing really well. That North against a really good team, I think that was pretty impressive. I still would have been impressed regardless of Brennan Armstrong starting at the quarterback position.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
So Isaiah Foskey led the Irish with 11 sacks last season. Isaiah's gone, as we all know. Do you buy or sell Notre Dame's top 2 sack leaders combining for at least that many by the time this season is over?
No, I don't. and the reason I say that, I'm going to lean on what I'm hearing from the man in charge, who is every time he gets the opportunity, he's telling us he's not worried about sacks. He just wants pressure and pass efficiency for his defense to stay where it's at. That's what he keeps saying. So if the coaching staff is not focused on getting sacks and getting the quarterbacks on the ground, how can I expect the players to play with that urgency and try to get quarterbacks on the ground? I mean, it starts at the top and it rolls downhill. It doesn't seem like it's a top priority. So no, I don't think they will reach that 11 sack mark.
I think it's going to be, I mean, like the team has 9 right now. And as you know, it's like we're looking at it and we'd like to see more sacks and all that kind of stuff. You do have to take into account, the Navy was still a factor in there. They have played Navy. You've played some of these mobile quarterbacks, so that factors as well. But I mean, Botello is the leader right now with 2, and then you've got 6 guys with 1, and then Leafau and John Baptiste each split a sack last week. So it's just like it. Again, with the level of competition they're playing, maybe we see an uptick in sacks in general, but I just don't see a couple of guys really just, like going off the charts unless, somebody like Howard Cross, for example, has some big game. And I wonder as well, because of what Howard Cross is doing, and give it up right now for a nose guard to be leading the team in tackles, by the way, with 35. How about that? The most most tackles for any interior defensive lineman in the nation right now. But I think that will have some ripple effects across the rest of the line as well, in terms of how teams are going to have to try to block him, and what can that do, what that can do for some other guys and potentially freeing them up and maybe giving them some opportunities. How can Al Golden kind of capitalize on that? But I still don't think that they get, two guys end up combining to get to at least 11.
I'll tell you one game where they better focus on getting the quarterback down, and that's USC.
Yep.
Because they saw last year, they put tremendous pressure on Caleb Williams in the first half, and he just ran around and made plays. You have to get him on the ground. However you want to keep
pure and simple. Yeah.
Keep him inside the end and the tackle box and get him on the ground. Because if you let him get outside, more than likely he's going to make a play.
Yeah. I actually think they're going to get some sacks this weekend.
I hope they do.
Yeah.
Well, like we talked about Jack Plummer, he's like a statue back there.
Yeah,
so
exactly. They sacked him. I think we started off the show talking about they sacked him 6 times last year when he was at Cal. Louisville, and somebody TD4ND said, "How do you pronounce Louisville? How do you say it? Are you a Louisville guy?" I'm a Louisville.
I like to say it the way they say it in Kentucky, and I think I don't know if I can do it, but I think it's Louisville with their little twang. It's not Louis. They don't say Louis or Louis.
Right.
So I like the way they say it. I really do.
Yep. I'm going to go ahead and throw a Notre Dame question or two in here. Mr. 2.0, did you hear the Paul Burmeister calls from this past weekend? I'd be okay with him in the booth for TV. I've said that all along. I said it all along that they should have just moved Paul Burmeister over there. The guy's got a ton more experience. He's got TV experience. He's obviously got the radio experience as well. He filled in. I thought he did a good job when he filled in on TV and that first home game. I would be completely down with that as well.
Love Paul Burmeister and the ultimate homer.
Yeah.
Our guy.
Ryan Harris. The whoops and the hollers. They're not going to let him in a TV booth.
No.
Unfortunately. But I'd be down with that as well. So Alabama plays Texas A&M this weekend. They're also going to face Arkansas and Tennessee this month. Now, what's significant about that? A loss to any of those 3 teams would give Nick Saban 2 losses before the end of the month of October for the first time since his first season in Tuscaloosa back in 2007. So, do you buy or sell Alabama winning all 3 of those games, Shaun?
I'm not going to doubt Nick Saban. I understand. I watched him against the USF. I understand the deficiencies at the quarterback position. They made a mistake, in my opinion, going away from Jalen Milroe when they did. I know he lost at home to Texas, but he put up 24 points. The other quarterbacks weren't ready. So at this point, they have to go back to old school Alabama football. Control the line of scrimmage, run the ball a lot, try to make a couple of good plays in the passing game down the field. And that defense is finally starting to play at the level that we expected it to play at. The Texas game is starting to look like an aberration, when they're going up against these SEC teams. But I don't think they'll face another SEC team other than maybe LSU offensively that can equal the offensive firepower that they saw against Texas. So I think Max Johnson is because of injury, he's going to get the start this weekend for A&M. A&M, it's at A&M, correct? Because they almost beat Bama at Bama last year.
Yes.
So I think it's at A&M, and they beat Alabama the last time that they came down to the home of the 12th man. So I think it's going to be a really close game, hotly contested, and I don't think they win all 3. But I definitely think they beat Tennessee because I think physically they're just going to control that game against Tennessee because I saw Florida do that against Tennessee. Arkansas, in my opinion, just doesn't have the horses.
Right.
So A&M has the best chance.
I think so as well. I think that A&M, I think that this is a really interesting game this weekend.
Mm-hmm.
Their only loss, Texas A&M's only loss is to Miami, who's still playing. Miami hasn't played a great schedule other than A&M, but we'll find out more about them. I think they play North Carolina here in a couple of weeks. But I agree. I've never been sold on Milton, for Tennessee, and he's been very inconsistent so far. They're definitely not going to be as physical. They're not as explosive as they were last year, and they're not going to be as physical as Alabama. I think that A&M has the chance, to be that team that can more than match Alabama's physicality. But because like you talk about a coach who's got to get it together, and that's Jimbo down there. I think things are on the line, and this could really be kind of a resurgence for Jimbo Fisher if they can win this game this weekend. I think of the three, this is the best chance. But when I look at these three, I don't think I'm sold that they're definitely going to lose all three. So I'm going to sell it for right now. But I do think that this like of the three, I think that this one's got the best chance.
And Texas A&M, by the way, whose defense has been really good other than that Miami game. If you look at their front four, you see all the 5 stars. And even though they were 5 stars, what it shows you is that these kids still need time to develop.
Right. Exactly.
Because what we were complaining about, the production they weren't getting the previous 2 years, now all of a sudden, all of these kids on that front four are making plays. And that just goes to show you, I don't care how many stars a kid has, that does not denote what it's going to take for them to get on the field and to produce at the level that we expect them to produce at. Every kid is different. Every recruit is different.
Yep. Fill in the blank. It's blank that Deion Sanders says he wouldn't want a lifetime contract if he was offered it. He was asked about this week.
Honest. It's honest. I know a lot of people fall on different sides of the coin when it comes to Deion Sanders. The one thing that I respect about Deion Sanders is that he is who he is. He is who he is. And in doing that, he's going to rub some people the wrong way. And in doing that, some people are going to love what he does. But no, I don't think he's very much, and this is going back to Jackson State, why he went there and why he said he ended up in Colorado. He's a man of God. He felt like he heard from God to go to both of these places. And, I believe he's probably at Colorado for a certain season. So in that stead, with him believing that, no, why would he accept a lifetime contract when he knows that, or he expects another season to come where he's going to be moving on to somewhere else because he feels like that's what God is going to tell him to do. So that's the way he's operated in the past. And I think he's going to continue to operate like that.
Yeah. I mean, he's still, especially, for being a head football coach, he's still very young. Why would anyone in his situation want to take a lifetime contract? It's
absolutely.
He's breathed new life into Colorado. But he said, he said something about his mom taught him, which way the fan blows, can change and stuff like that, in typical Deion fashion. But you're exactly right. Like you sign that lifetime contract and then a couple years down the road, something happens. And, why would he want to get into a commitment and then break that commitment just a couple years down the road? And like from Colorado's standpoint, why would they want to give him a lifetime contract?
And think about it, Shaun. Think about everything that's transpired since he took the job. He took the job. USC and UCLA went to the Big Ten. Then you had other programs from the Pac-12 go to other conferences. So now what he initially walked into as a conference,
completely different. Just like with Lincoln Riley. Look at Lincoln Riley. Like he thought he was, getting out of the Big 12 and going to the Pac-12, and he was going to be there, and it didn't even take a year. And they're going to the not even like it took a matter of months. Actually, I don't think he had even coached a game before USC made that announcement last year. So it's things can change in a hurry. And like TD friend, he says, is Dion going to the NFL? I mean, I don't get the feeling that that's what he wants to do. He seems like he's really set on college, but he's going to be in demand. He's going to get a lot of interest from the NFL, I think.
He's good for college football. There are certain people that look, he's good for college football. Jim Harbaugh is good for college football, in my opinion. You know why? Because they bring in both sides of the equation.
Right.
To the party. They bring the people that can't stand them.
Right.
And they bring the people that love them.
And that's why like people are talking about, oh, you keep blowing up this Dion stuff.
Absolutely.
Every Colorado game, like think about, nobody watched Colorado football for the last 15 or 20 years.
No.
They were not a hot commodity in terms of a TV product, an attendance product, in terms of anything. But every game so far, that noon game last week, Colorado and USC, I think the rating was like 7.5 million people was the average audience. That's a noon game for Colorado USC. That was 2 million more than watched Notre Dame Duke last week. Think about that in prime time.
All of their games have broken Pac-12 viewing records.
Yeah.
And that's in itself.
And I mean, the Big 12
amazing.
is Brett Yormark is sitting there going, yeah, buddy. Yeah, buddy.
Absolutely. You know they are. So they're good. I think Marcus Freeman is good for college football. We have a lot of young coaches that are really good for the future of college football as it moves forward. Really good.
Yep. Fill in the blank. The Chase Claypool situation with the Chicago Bears is blank. And this is obviously very close to home for you. What do you think about this whole thing?
It's a teaching lesson to all athletes. If you're not the best player or the quarterback on the team, you can't say that.
My thoughts exactly.
He said the same thing Justin Fields said a week prior.
Yep.
Justin Fields had just answered the same question
Yep.
and answered it the exact same way. Justin Fields just happens to be the quarterback. Chase Claypool, and he had fallen out of favor a little bit with the coaching staff with a lack of effort against the Green Bay Packers. He caught a touchdown that following week against Tampa Bay, and he felt like he was starting to get into a groove, and he got trapped. He allowed himself to get trapped by the media, asking that question, and he should have just, I understand. See, this is what I think I said. I tweeted this out. I said, I understand that the media and fans soak up players being PC when they answer questions. And you feel like, well, that might be the case, but you shouldn't have said that, right? That's not being a team player. Look, these players, they go out to dinner and they talk. These conversations are happening. Regardless of whether or not it's said in front of the camera, the conversations are happening. I guarantee you, Chicago Bears players are sitting there talking to each other about how bad Matt Eberflus and the staff have been. They're talking about it.
Right.
So we can ask, would you rather the athlete be honest and answer the question, or would you rather him just continue to be PC and the real conversation stay in the background amongst the players?
Yeah. And I guess, like maybe we should appreciate Ryan Day for going off the way he did after the game, just because he could have taken the PC approach, but he gave us all something to talk about for a week.
It was his honest feelings, right?
Right.
He eventually apologized, but it was his honest feelings. Lou Holtz gave his honest opinion.
Right.
About Ohio State.
And that's what, most of these, just like Sean Payton's words are coming back to bite him right now when he went after Nathaniel Hackett the way he did, but he gave a true opinion rather than playing, giving a vanilla answer on the whole thing.
Absolutely.
And
so
was it a little bit arrogant? Maybe, sure. But again, he gave a true, honest opinion. And I think that's all you can ask for, really. But you're absolutely right. Like, if it was Aaron Rodgers, Justin Jefferson, someone of that stature, it's handled completely differently. But when you're in Chase Claypool's situation, what you're putting on film is what you're putting on film, and it ain't good.
Nope.
And you're saying that kind of stuff. It's not going to work out well for you.
Yeah, like you said, they're not sending Justin Jefferson home.
That's right.
For the weekend. No, they wouldn't
exactly
do
right.
that.
That's exactly right. A couple that I wanted to slip in here.
Okay.
This whole Pat McAfee thing. Salty asking about Pat McAfee recently picked a fight with Washington State's fan base on game day. Does this degrade game day or make it more relevant to a younger audience? And I know a lot of people kind of went after McAfee, and like some of the stuff that he said probably did cross the line. But I did actually catch part of his show. I think it was yesterday, and he said he had gotten, he's obviously got a lot of Washington State fans coming after him. His biggest thing was they were going after Lee Corso for what Lee Corso said, and he didn't feel like it was appropriate to be going after an 88-year-old man, especially for, like, I think that Corso's comments were twisted a little bit by the Washington State head coach with some of the stuff that he said. But McAfee did apologize because he said, like, apparently the Washington State fan, like the ones that he's hearing from were truly, concerned that their program might cease to exist because of what's going on out there with, in the Pac-12 and all that stuff, so like he did apologize. I do think that he crossed a line on game day, so I don't, but at the same time, he said he was doing it in defense of Lee Corso, which I can understand.
Yeah, I don't even have to deal with that incident. And I totally agree with everything you said. For me, watching game day has been kind of difficult as someone that grew up with it as a teenager until this point, the tradition of it. And I understand that Lee Corso was on his last leg, with his health concerns and everything. But, him making his pick at the end is still one of the greatest things that give you a big laugh going into the 11 o'clock and 12 o'clock games. It just is. And the Pat McAfee thing, I'm going to be honest with you, Shaun, I've struggled with it a little bit. I understand why they made the move. I understand his popularity right now and the energy he brings to the show. Amongst the other guys that are like really chill guys, Kurt's really chill, Desmond's really chill. He does bring a different energy that kind of like solicits the younger CFB fan.
Right.
So I understand the business behind it, but Bear had been a fixture. Now he's on Fox. Now they asked Stanford Steve on. So it's just been a lot of changes, and I've really been trying to get used to it and enjoy it. But, Pat says pretty much every weekend, Pat says some pretty wild things on the show.
And that's, like Stymie says, he's literally a pro wrestler, and he's worked for WWE and done some of that. He knows how to work the heel character. And I will say this, because like when Vince and I talked about him early in the season, like Vince's impression of Pat McAfee is what he sees on game day. And the character that I think that he is portraying on game day, it is definitely a souped up version of what you get of Pat McAfee during the Pat McAfee show. They're like, it's two different things. And I had never really seen the Pat McAfee show until they launched this thing on ESPN at the start of the football season. That's when they did it. And I've been watching it more, and there's definitely a difference. Like I said, he sort of heightens and plays up that, if you want to call him the pro wrestling heel or whatever on game day, that's a different Pat McAfee than the guy that you see on his weekday show, the Pat McAfee show.
I know he did one thing that I thought last week was a tad bit disrespectful. They were doing, they go before the board and answer questions, one segment every show. And they were doing that, and Mike Elko was off on the side getting ready to join them to be interviewed. And so one of the questions was, who's the next head coach of Michigan State? And Pat McAfee turns around and points to Mike Elko. And I just felt like this is Duke Notre Dame. Like, this is a big weekend. Don't do that to him.
Yeah.
Don't connect him to that Michigan State job like that. Michigan State probably will come after him and probably will throw a bag at him. He more than likely, he probably takes it. But with him getting ready to come on and interview with you guys and talk about the game, and then he has to coach, that don't connect that to him. I felt like it was unfair to Coach Elko, but that's just Pat McAfee being him.
Right.
He's just being him, and I felt like, okay, you're being funny or you're trying to be funny, but I don't know if Mike Elko likes that at
I mean,
all.
Crystal does make a good point. He is the one guy that acts like he's excited to be, but
Oh, absolutely.
those other guys have been doing it for a long time.
For a long time. So it's a paycheck
different
for them. Yeah, it's definitely a paycheck for the other guys to this point.
Yeah.
And I think that's what they saw. Like, we need somebody to bring the energy. And he's definitely full of energy each and every Saturday.
For sure. Mark brought this question is, does it surprise you networks pay millions to some of their commentators like Tony Romo? I know you complain about the commentators, but never heard of watching a game because of the broadcast team, especially with the NFL. The NFL has approval over who's going to be in these number one booths. And they want, like, the big thing is you want credibility. It's not that you're tuning in to watch the game. You want credibility and at least perceived big game, big booth, big announcer feel when you tune into what is supposed to be, like a national game, whether it's a Super Bowl, a playoff, or just the primetime windows that they have. And when you're selling this product to advertisers, you've got to have that kind of feel. And that's why these guys get the money. It's not that people are necessarily tuning in for the announcers, but when you tune in for these big games, you've got to have credibility and a big name feel in that booth.
And to be honest, now that I'm older, I focus a little bit more on the nuances of broadcasting and what's being said. But as a kid, I still to this day, Shaun, I can hear Vern Lundquist in my ear.
Right.
Still to this day, I can still hear Mr. Jackson saying "Whoa, Nelly" in my ear.
Right.
It's like it's the feel they give you about the game. They make you believe that this is a big game. Mike Tirico is the same. They give you a feeling.
Yeah. John Madden, with the
John
Slava knockers.
Absolutely. So for me, if they can do that, if the commentator, if they can do that for you and make the game that you're watching more of an experience, so you're not really focused on whether or not the color analyst is breaking it down the way you see it, or you agree or disagree, just enjoy it, because it should be an experience. That's what the great ones do. They make the game you're watching an experience.
Yep. Completely agree. And that's why Buck and Aikman got all that. I mean, look at all the talk for years after, was it? I'm trying to think of which booth was which. Basically, the Monday Night Football booth for years was just a train wreck. And, you had Tirico. He was good, but, he was with Gruden. People were, in and out on Gruden. So I'm not saying that Tirico was a train wreck by any means, but most of the talk really for the last 15, 20, maybe even more years was like, what's wrong with the Monday Night Football booth? They can't get the Monday Night Football booth right. Well, they went out, they spent the money. First they got Troy Aikman, and then Joe Buck followed. They're spending a lot of money for that booth. But the Monday night booth right now, you could argue that it's the best that it's ever been, but at the very least, it's the best that it's been in 20 plus years.
You win, you got the best combo in the biz.
Right.
And that's, I actually think people complain about Kirk Herbstreit. In my opinion, Kirk Herbstreit is better on the Thursday NFL package than he is in college football. Because I think it's something fresh and new for him.
Right.
Whereas college football, he's been doing it.
I think he's good. And I'm not saying Al Michaels is bad, but they haven't really gelled yet.
Yeah, they haven't gelled yet. I definitely would agree with that. Al Michaels is another one that, and not just football, just Al Michaels has done it in so many different sports, like the Olympics, and boxing, and
Last one tonight. This is for you specifically from David. What is the best kind of cookie And why is it oatmeal?
I love you, David. I love you. A man after my own heart. Oatmeal raisin is always the best. Always. It's just, yo, you get the oats, the taste of the oats, then the raisins. And then if you have the right amount of like cinnamon and oatmeal raisin is
Little
undefeated.
molasses kind of in there. And yeah, it's like,
Molasses. Well said, Shaun. You know exactly what I'm talking about. Now, chocolate chip, this is the way I feel. Oatmeal raisin, no matter where I go, is a more consistent cookie. Chocolate chip is hit or miss, in my opinion, because it depends upon the way it's made. There are some great insomnia cookies make fantastic chocolate chunk cookies. Fantastic, right? I don't know if they have one in the South Bend area because they're usually located next to universities and colleges all across the country. So we have one here next to the University of Chicago in Hyde Park. But Insomnia Cookies makes fantastic chocolate chip cookies. Nestle has a good chocolate chip cookie in the mall every now and then.
I tell you, I agree. The oatmeal raisin cookie gets a bad rap when they are like fresh and like little moist, like a little bend to them. They don't have to be hot necessarily, but I do really like a good oatmeal raisin cookie. My favorite though is the Blondies out at the mall, the sugar cookie with the icing on it, with like basically like the birthday cake icing on the sugar cookie.
Yeah.
Very soft. That is my absolute favorite. Those things melt in your mouth. I love those things.
That's your favorite cookie?
That's my favorite cookie by far. That's right.
Yeah. Insomnia has a lemon white chocolate that is only available close to Easter.
Okay. Where is Insomnia? I've heard of that place. Is that the one? Like that's like a big city place, right?
No, they literally put them. The first one I went to was in Connecticut on the Yale campus.
Okay.
And then I came back to Chicago and found out that they had one connected to the University of Chicago campus. So they connect them to universities and colleges. And that's why I asked if I was like, yo, they must have one in South Bend around the university, but I guess not. But you can do a search on Google, Insomnia Cookies.
I've heard of that place, but I don't think I've ever been to one. So
it's fantastic.
Which is kind of surprising because my wife is one of those people, like anytime we go someplace, she's always looking for, like what's the cupcake place? What's the cookie place with like the fancy stuff, all that stuff. Terry Tyler says Crumble Cookie is fire. They've got some pretty solid cookies.
They have some, but they sometimes Crumble does a little bit too much.
I think so too.
Too much on top of the cookie.
Keep it simple. That's
absolutely.
That's right. Well, that is going to do it for tonight. Shaun, had a blast being here with you again. We've gone for almost an hour and a half. We were just on a roll there.
It's always a joy when we're together. Always a joy when I'm with you, man.
That's right. All right. Thanks again, Shaun, for doing it. Thanks, everybody, for being here. Be sure you hit that like button on your way out. And, of course, subscribe, rate, review. What'd you see there?
Someone said they do have it in South Bend.
The Insomnia?
Yeah.
All right. I'm going to have to look that up. I'm going to have to talk to my wife about that.
Fantastic.
My birthday's coming up next week, so maybe I'll try some Insomnia. So
you got big plans? Just a steak dinner and
breakfast. Breakfast has become our birthday tradition. Sunday morning breakfast, like around the birthday weekend. So
a man after my own heart. I'm a breakfast guy. I can eat it 24 hours of the day.
That's right. I haven't had biscuits and gravy in a while, so I'm gonna have to hit some of that this weekend. I'm looking.
Are you gonna have like little bits of sausage in it in the gravy?
Of course.
Oh, that's the best.
I know.
Oh, Shaun, I know. You might have to send me an invite.
My stomach is rumbling right. I might have to. Thank you very much, Derek. Thank you very much, Tom. It's next Monday if you guys want to get me anything. I'm just saying.
First of all, we have to get you a win Saturday night. How about that?
That's right. That's the start. That's the start right there.
A start right there.
All right. Have a good one, Shaun. I will talk to you hopefully again soon.
Absolutely.
All right. Subscribe, rate, review, hit the like button, and we will talk to you later on IB Nation Sports Talk.